giving oneself time to dedicate oneself before Pesach, benachat, not to really connect to the spirit of the day and what it means. With OCD, really needs to be a Rav involved who gives you clear guidelines, because OCD kicks in very strongly when there's room for doubt. And when it comes to cleaning for Pesach, I mean, that's like that's like the ultimate.
We are coming up on Pesach, and it's a time, talking about stress. There's certainly no shortage of stress involved in many homes around Pesach, whether it's the cleaning, the preparation, Seder night itself. There's a lot of demands, paternal demands on getting this clean and getting this done by Chatzos and all those things. So any sort of practical tips for those who want to experience their pre-Pesach and their Pesach in a state of serenity and joy as much as possible. Simcha Yom Tov, which I know is maybe surprising to even think about with all the stress going on, but some of the key tips that you've sort of developed or seen to help people navigate this time and their mental health.
Yeah, look, first, Chazati just love the Malachei Asharis Nitnu, and when it comes to cleaning, and also things at the same time, but especially when it comes to cleaning, it's important also to, number one, have a Rav and know what is actually, what I should be doing in terms of cleaning. And to the extent that a person has nitiyot to anxiety or to OCD, which we haven't discussed, but a separate discussion, then it's important, all the more important. Sometimes people like that will gravitate to a more intense Rav, but it's really important for a person with some of those nitiyot to have a Rav who really understands psychology and can address things for that particular person. But to know what the obligations are and what the obligations are not. This also comes up in couples issues in terms of, it can be the husband too, but more often the wife who wants to do massive spring cleaning and the like. So to know that it's not obligatory is important. On the other hand, for the husband, if you know that that's what your wife needs to do, even though it's not halacha, there's also an issue of acceptance and not being in a 3-decade fight about, whether we do spring cleaning or not, if it's going to end up happening anyway, of being able to move past it and accept, and then try to figure out how we balance that within, maybe start the process early or whatever it is. Some of these things we get into OCD, and with OCD, really needs to be a Rav involved who gives you clear guidelines, because OCD kicks in very strongly when there's room for doubt. And when it comes to cleaning for Pesach, I mean, that's like the ultimate. And so sometimes you need a Rav who'll give you very clear guidelines. I work with guys with OCD surrounding nikius, cleaning themselves in the bathroom, especially before tefillah, or with lahavdil, putting on tefillin, and have had rabbanim who've given them psak, in the bathroom. Pardon me for the graphicness, but you wipe for maximum 2 minutes and you're out of there. Not 15 minutes, like 2 minutes and you're out of there. Tefillin, you adjust your tefillin for 10 seconds. It hit the right spot. You're good. You move on. Some people need that degree of direction when it comes to cleaning, of how much time they can actually devote to it, and then move on. But above all this, I think it's really about. I once heard there's a psychologist from Yerushalayim, Dr. Elchanan Adler, who spoke in the Beit Daniel, and he was speaking to people mostly my age, my generation, and describing the difference that my generation was a generation of halachic rebellion against their parents. That is to say that, we know better because, we observe halacha better than we the 50-year-olds, better than the 80-year-olds did. That the other generation's rebellion in Israel, I think maybe in America to some degree, more so in Israel, is one of spirituality and meaning. In Israel especially, in the Tilumi world of Koch, etc., there's plenty of, in Breslov, plenty of Hasidus that has come into our world. Even in America, you have the, Eish Kodesh phenomenon, etc. And so there's a sense and there's an understanding that Kiyum Mitzvos is also about meaning and connection and passion. And so, I think it might have been the Torah Tamima who talked about the difference between Reb Chaim and the Netziv at the Seder. Reb Chaim was, Mimukad on the Shiurim, and the Netziv was, king, majesty at the Seder. I lean a little bit in the latter direction, but I think that giving oneself time to dedicate oneself before Pesach, benachat, not Erev Pesach, but benachat, to preparing for one Seder. Yeah, some Hilchos Pesach, but as much of things that I want to talk about at the Seder, this to parents, within reason of what is going to work for your kids, v'chulei, 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 but if you're not at your Seder, then with your chavrusa in the weeks leading up to it, and on Chol Hamoed or whatever else, but to really connect to the spirit of the day and what it means, and to the extent that one is not 90% of one's learning focusing on halacha, it's more likely that your mind is going to be in a place where you can move beyond that. And we also, at the Seder, we go to the same thing, which, in terms of the issue of shiurim and people being lachut. So first of all, to tap into, whether it's Hasidus or just, even Litvish kavanas are nice. Thoughts about the meaning of matzah, etc. Before I lean left, and not just just thinking about how many bites I'm going to finish this matzah off, and and the likes. Those are some things that I think could be helpful.